Just a quick reminder for everyone that we should be really careful about where we get our news from. With the current state of the globe and where we're at technologically, it is super easy to have 24/7 news. And a small percentage of this news can be super misleading and sometimes not entirely accurate. So before you make any opinions or judgments, just know that you may want to get the full story by going to a few different news sources rather than sticking to just one. And unfortunately, social media is simply not a credible news source. Carry on.
Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Cook. We will be reacting to a new video today, so make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's get into the video.
I think when it comes to information, people need to learn how to get their information off of a platform that doesn't require you to have followers. For example, I wouldn't get my information off of X, TikTok, Instagram, none of it. I mean, it's a good basis to start looking and researching, but please find a non-biased news source to look up things, because it's just the spread of misinformation.
Social media is such an interesting place because on one hand, like, we have the ability to learn so much from other people. We have the ability to feel seen and less alone, right? Because everybody is sharing their experiences and their lives and their thoughts and their feelings and all of these things. But also, on the flip side, it can just be such a huge source of misinformation. I have a video right now that's trending, going viral, semi-viral, I don't know, about boundaries and like clearing up, basically saying that like discretion is necessary when you're setting boundaries. And in the comments, you know, people are like, I'm so confused. So many people are saying different things about boundaries. My friend did X, Y, and Z and said that this was a boundary. Is that right? And, you know, I found myself trying to like individually go in and clear things up for people. But I think that like this is a symptom of a larger issue, because we're all sharing the same internet together, but how can you tell like the competent from the incompetent, the educated from the uneducated, right? Like, how are you supposed to distinguish and determine like who to listen to and trust when there are so many voices and opinions happening simultaneously on one app about the same topic? Now, I know that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to boundaries. Like, I know that to be true. But I do think that it's a problem, right? And it can be a really, really big source of confusion. So I don't know. I don't have a solution. I was just kind of thinking out loud. That's it. Bye.
Where is the media literacy? Where are the AI detection and disinformation detection classes? Because at this point, these should be free classes that all people above 30, you know what, forget that. All people, period, who are consuming the news should be required to take. Why did I just talk to a family member about that horrific plane crash that just happened in DC? And they were like, oh yeah, I heard the plane was carrying a bunch of migrants. What? I know that whoever she got this from, or wherever that person got it from, was off of Facebook and an unreputable source. If you simply went to go read a news article from any reputable outlet, you would know immediately that the flight was from Kansas and it was landing into DC and it was hit by a military chopper. But these social threads are now our main source of getting information. And when Meta is repealing community notes and tackling disinformation, it's making it so much easier for, no disrespect, our elders and older people who are newer to the internet and weren't raised with digital literacy and weren't raised as digital natives to believe this information as it comes at face value. And it's ridiculous. I don't know who needs to fund this. We already know that disinformation is basically what won Trump the election both times, but this is getting really scary and we need to do something about it.
Pay attention to this comment right here. As an educator, and more specifically a sex educator, I feel like I spend more time dispelling myths and addressing misinformation than I do actually teaching. And that's a part of education too, right? Unlearning. It's a full circle process at times. I did a video specifically about misinformation, and of course those never get the traction that you want them to. But the current literacy level of people in the United States, at least as of 2022, was around a 6th grade reading level. And to add to that, most people are getting their news from Facebook, not from news sources on Facebook, from their friends and family. So yeah, there's a bunch of information that we're all being subjected to on a daily basis. Some of it's great content, some of it is bullshit, quite frankly. And there's a lot of scammers as well. And then the culture of influencers. I think it comes down to personal ethics here in influencing. Some people will do anything to make money. A lot of people will glamorize a certain lifestyle, including parenting or even being child-free, to the point of excess and shame. But I think it distorts reality for a lot of people. And if social media is where they're getting most of their information and education, then we have a problem. Again, not to say that they're all bad sources on social media. I'm a social media information consumer too. But I don't think these types of comments are brought up enough. So thank you.
All right, so obviously, medical misinformation is a huge issue, especially on social media. And obviously, there are a lot of med influencers who are trying to combat that. And so they make posts about other people spreading misinformation, trying to fight the good fight. And I totally get that. There's just issues with this approach. One, if you try to blast another influencer or somebody else trying to educate, even though it's completely wrong, and you try to blast them on your page, you're not going to allow a meaningful discussion to take place. Now, will you get views? Yes. Will you get people to agree with you? Yes. Will you change some minds? Yes, absolutely. You're, again, doing and fighting the good fight and teaching people what the truth actually is, or at least how to find the truth with papers, data, and whatnot. The thing is, over time, that negative energy is not going to go anywhere. Blasting people is not going to go anywhere because you've already grown your audience. And the people that you want to bring along now is the audience of that other influencer who's spreading the misinformation. But people have to realize that that audience that follows the people who are just so extreme already have fixed beliefs. They're not willing to change their mind, right? We saw this in COVID. You had people who were everything the government said, we're going to follow policy, we're going to do all that. And then you had everyone on the other side, no masking, no vaccinations, nothing, right? And it was very difficult to be in that gray area in the middle and have a meaningful discussion. And so the negative energy doesn't do anyone good. Again, I do believe it's a good fight. I do believe there is some value in it. It's just over time, it's not going to do anything. And that's the issue, right? Is that the only way to really have a discussion, have people understand the truth, and have a nuanced discussion is through a friendly debate in a way, right? Kind of how Joe Rogan brings on people and moderates, or even going on Instagram Live with that other influencer and trying to just discuss it out, right? Not trying to blame, not trying to shame. Everyone out there is trying to get followers. Everyone out there is trying to get views. We live in a world with true tribalism, right? Like you find your tribe because you feel safe in that tribe. And everyone's victimizing themselves if they see the opposite. And there's just so much wrong, obviously, with social media, mental health, all these things. And it's not as easy to just see yourself get blasted and then change, right? I mean, no one's going to be like, yep, you're right. I admit to that mistake. I'm going to completely go against what I said, right? Because now you're talking about human nature and human psychology, and people are going to say, well, there goes my credibility, right? And so people are actually going to double down when they get blasted. And so you're going to see this tug of war, right? And rather than having that, what we need is just a nuanced discussion of influencers going live, going on podcasts, and really bringing both audiences together without shame, again, without guilt, and just trying to reach some sort of equilibrium. Doesn't mean they have to agree. People are going to live different ways. People are going to respond to things differently, and that's completely okay. But the negative energy is just not worth it.
I finally discovered why misinformation is so rampant on social media. And I know everyone wants to blame it on all of the social media companies like TikTok and Meta and blah, 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 blah. And I get it, algorithms and such, they do their thing. But I actually tested this out, so here it goes. The truth isn't sexy. The truth isn't lucrative. The truth doesn't pay creators. And the truth, you don't want to hear it. You don't want to sit and listen to just logical stuff. And I know this because when I post videos of current events that are thoroughly researched, nobody watches them. They completely flop, max out at maybe 600 views, no comments, nothing. But the second I put up a video with some sort of crazy opinion, it goes wild. I mean, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of views, and it just takes off. The comment section gets filled with just crazy amounts of misinformation itself, and it just takes off. So it's really not the social media companies that does it. It's you guys. Because you guys love to listen to it. And it's actually not you. It's actually the human race. Human race thrives on that kind of stuff. I just thought that was interesting.
I'm going to name a problem. I know it's been named before, but I'm seeing an influx of misinformation. The number of creators that are talking about ADHD and the signs of ADHD and them not being signs of ADHD is alarming. I think that I know that there is a big problem with, first of all, seeing somebody's video, piggybacking off of their video, using what you learned from their video, but what they were teaching was actually incorrect. And so if we have one, it's just like if you pay it forward and you're spreading kindness. If this video is misinformation and then somebody over here posts it, and here and here and here, and each of those videos using that same misinformation is like here and here and here and here, that's what's happening. And I know that it's not just an ADHD problem, but like the number of things that I'm seeing people say that are either just blatant autism or autism and ADHD it's just alarming. And so just a reminder to check your sources, ask a creator where they got their information. And you don't need to do it in a rude way, but at the same time, like, we have to start demanding evidence instead of just believing what people are saying, myself included. If I ever say something and you want to know where I got my information, please ask. But the ADHD train right now is quite problematic.
A quick reminder, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's continue the video.
So we've been talking about a lot of ways that you can spot misinformation online, including the language that is used, right? But how do you tell what information is accurate and trustworthy? In a lot of ways, accurate information is going to be presented opposite to how misinformation is going to be presented. So let me give you some examples. Accurate information is going to provide you with more context and more details related to claims and conditions. For example, modifying your diet may improve depressive symptoms if your symptoms are somewhere between the mild to moderate range, and if you don't have any other comorbid serious psychiatric conditions, as well as extensive familial history. That sentence that I just talked about right there is inclusive of a couple of things. Number one, it may provide benefit. Number two, I mentioned the conditions in which diet may improve depressive symptoms. Accurate information and claims is going to be presented to you under certain contexts and under certain conditions, because that's how things actually work. And it's also going to be presented to you as a possibility, right? Because nothing is necessarily going to be a guarantee, and everything is different in terms of individual context and why things work for certain people. So with regards to the language being used, it's not going to be words that delineate 100% certainty. That is truly reflective of understanding the nuance and complexity in which conditions exist and which solutions may help people.
Guys, we have to speak on this topic because this is getting ridiculous at this point. Always investigate before you invest. Do your research before you believe anything. Look at the facts, the stats, the data. The amount of misinformation, especially on social media, is ridiculous. There are a lot of people saying things that are not true and who have no qualifications to say those things whatsoever. There are a lot of people like this, and they say whatever they want to say, and you guys believe them. Do your research, guys. You cannot believe everything you hear on the news. Remember, all news channels are listed as a business under entertainment. It's not actually credible news. It's their stories, news stories. And so they never get prosecuted for the lies they say on their channels because it's under entertainment. It's not under news. That is how slick these news companies are. And they never get held to all the lies and misinformation that they spread. They themselves refuse to do the research. They themselves have a lot of biases. They're extremely biased, one side or another. They never come in the middle, in the center. And it is crazy to me. We don't want your opinion. We want the facts. What has happened? What is going on in the world so that we can prepare for whatever is to come. But if we do not get the facts and the whole news segment is just on lies, biases, misinformation, and all of these things, and opinions. It's just like, this is why so many people have stopped watching the news. Number one is always negative news. Show something positive for a change. Show something positive that can uplift people's spirits, especially in these hard times. But no, it's just negativity after negativity after negativity and all of these things. Come on, you guys really have to do better.
We've all seen the piece of information circulating saying that the north of Gaza is completely ethnically cleansed and that there's no living people in the north of Gaza. I myself have reposted those stories. I myself have said that on TikTok, but that's not true. This statistic was given out by the Israeli government. So while a lot of the people from northern Gaza have left and have dispersed to the south of Gaza, we cannot confirm that there are no living people left in the north of Gaza. There is undoubtedly Palestinians left in the north of Gaza, either stuck in the rubble, in their homes, captured by the IDF. There are people still in the north of Gaza. The Israeli government wants us to stop talking about them so that way they can think that that part of Gaza is completely gone, decimated. There's nothing there, when actually real people still remain there, and God only knows how many. The goal that Zionists have and what the Israeli government has is for us to slowly forget about Gaza, to slowly stop talking about them, to allow them to eventually be completely ethnically cleansed, to be completely genocided, to be completely gone. And these words are very heavy and horrible, but that's what they want. That's truly what they want. And I urge you all to please keep talking. Please keep spreading that there are people in the north of Gaza, that we need to keep advocating for them. There might not be any more press in Gaza because they're scared as well, and they've evacuated as well. But there's still people there, and we need to keep making sure that their names are alive as well.
Okay, Dr. Clark here. Going through social media, it's actually getting scary to me, because the amount of medical misinformation targeting pregnant, trying to conceive, and postpartum individuals, and especially around childbirth. In my opinion, expert opinion actually, it's becoming dangerous. But I understand that for the average person on social media, it's hard to tease out who is qualified to be giving information about trying to conceive, pregnancy, postpartum, and birth. So let me tell you what doesn't make someone qualified or an expert, in my expert opinion, to give such information. Someone who's given birth. If that's their only qualification, they're qualified to talk about their personal experience. People who have received online certificates or went to a weekend course, not qualified to be educating or giving any kind of medical advice on social media. And whether they like to put a disclaimer or not, a lot of what these accounts do is medical advice. It is. People in other areas of medicine who have never cared for pregnant individuals except when they were in medical school. Not qualified. They're not experts just because they have an MD behind their name, but they're in some other field. What I find is a lot of those accounts do it because it gets them views, because pregnancy and birth is a very, very controversial and hot topic right now. And it has been. Anybody with something coach behind their name, not qualified to be giving any medical advice on management, anything in pregnancy, birth, trying to conceive, none of that. Coach, in my expert opinion, for what it's worth, is largely a self-given title. There are even people who write books about obstetrical care who have never cared for a pregnant individual, not one time. All they did was get on Google or PubMed and synthesize a bunch of articles, and that made them an expert. That's dangerous. Let me tell you what makes me an expert. A gazillion years of training, reading, certifications, maintenance of certification, online courses, in-person courses. But more importantly than that, it's actually being at the bedside and touching patients, examining them, talking to them face to face, learning about the clinical nuance and how to apply to what's recommended as regarding standards of care, because everyone's an individual. That can never be replaced by anyone's made up link in bio or a profile, whatever they claim to have as far as certifications or qualifications. Clinical expertise means everything. But I'll close by saying this. What's even more alarming to me is that these accounts know they're not qualified. They know that, but they will do this shit anyway because it helps them grow their accounts. They don't care what happens to you. if you listen to them and something goes wrong. They don't care because they have no accountability or liability. You have to remember that.
I need to go on a real quick psych rant right now because I've been thinking about this a lot. I saw a doctor in psychology make a TikTok a few days ago about the harmful effects of misinformation just being spread all over social media and using diagnostic terms incorrectly to label and describe situations, people, ourselves in ways that are just untrue. For example, she talked about how a lot of people will call their ex a narcissist. The chances of him being a true narcissist with narcissistic personality disorder is probably unlikely. This does not invalidate the people who actually have dated narcissists, but the term is so widely used and it doesn't actually mean what they're trying to use it for. If you feel sad one day, that doesn't make you depressed. If you get anxious before giving a speech, that doesn't mean that you just had a panic attack. Just because you sleep a certain way, act a certain way, are interested in certain activities does not mean that you have ADHD or autism. Just because something brings up unhappy memories or uncomfortable feelings does not mean that you have PTSD associated with that event. Just because you like things clean or you like to wash your hands after touching something gross does not mean that you have OCD. In fact, that is only one kind of OCD. There are so many types of OCDs. So the stigma with that is just, it makes me angry, honestly. They're very powerful diagnostic terms, and for people who are actually diagnosed with these things, they're very serious things that they have to deal with every day. There's just a problem with people saying these terms in passing to describe things that don't actually meet the criteria for these terms or these diagnoses. One of the very first things that we learned in my clinical psychology grad program were about the use of these terms, and they are called idioms of distress. Like, I just watched a really sad video and it made me so depressed. Or, oh my god, she's acting so delusional. She probably doesn't have schizophrenia. We as a society need to be more careful with the terms that we use to describe our emotions and our experiences, because for so many people, these are real things that they have to deal with every single day. And chances are what you're experiencing is normal and not diagnosable.
I think there's a concerted conversation that we can have as a society about the damage that social media has wrought on our citizens, and especially those with developing brains. And there's kernels of truth to the amount of misinformation and the general lack of vetting and credentials and sourcing that comes from certain aspects of social media. We can totally have that conversation. But there's something so almost humorously insidious about the notion that they think that this is exclusive to TikTok, or they think that we'll believe that it's exclusive to TikTok, when I think it was Facebook that has the most prominent forms of data scraping and identity theft or something. I may be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that. But I don't think I need to tell y'all this. I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say this. But don't lose the thread. Banning TikTok is about three things only: stopping the solidarity efforts with Palestine, stopping subsequent solidarity efforts with the working class, and controlling the narrative. Because all of the things, all the kernels of truth that you can derive about the problems that social media poses against our society are true across every single social media platform. But they're not doing shit about Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any other major social media platform that also does all the horrible things that TikTok does. So again, I'm probably preaching to the choir, and I'm not even on this app very much, and this video is probably gonna get 2 likes. My battery is dying because I didn't anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is, I'm probably saying something that all y'all don't even need to hear, but I think the more people say it, the more that this message will penetrate, and the ability for us as a society to make the connections that have been meticulously and intentionally severed between us as individuals, between different, I'm a labor organizer, and the very intentional manner with which our work and every other facet of our society that's important to us, housing, healthcare, the environment, etc., all of that has been siloed and disconnected from one another. Rugged individualism, just completely decimating solidarity because divide and conquer. This is a part of that. And it's kind of bananas when you really think about it. Like, you think about, the TikTok dancing app, it's being banned because worker solidarity and class consciousness is being developed on this app. But yeah, that's basically what it is. Palestine, worker solidarity, and not being able to control the narrative. Those are the three reasons why they're banning TikTok. So just don't lose sight of that if this goes through, which it probably will. And yeah, just remember to make connections with the same people you make connections here on other platforms. Follow them, find them. Don't lose those connections. That is one of the biggest reasons that this ban is going through. It has very, very, very little, if rather nothing, to do with national security and protecting the children. So anyway, toodles.
Y'all, let me ask you something. And yeah, I'm in bed. I look like this, whatever. Something that is increasingly pissing me off more and more is the amount of people who will just come on here and be like, here's something I'm stating as fact, and then I'm gonna back it up with this opinion of mine. It kind of goes back to my Gen Z's conservative video. People will be like, yeah, Gen Z is so conservative because they don't want to pop pussy. That's how we know Gen Z is more conservative. But they'll do that with other things too. They'll be like, actually, women don't protest as much as men. And then they'll be like, this is true because I went to this one protest and it had more men than women. They'll say something totally only supported by their opinion, but then claim it to be fact. They're like, recession indicator, no one's wearing eyeshadow. A sign that Donald Trump's gonna declare war, it came to me in a vision. And it's only perpetuating the misinformation cycle. I really need you guys to start to care about what you're putting on the internet and know that research is not a 2-second Google search nor your opinion on something.
Some people may not agree with this take, but it's something that's been weighing on me all week, and I want to just talk about how we as people and human beings should not have this much exposure to such bad news every single time we scroll on social media. It's actually really damaging our nervous systems and how we move in life, especially because a massive percentage of this news that we are all exposing is actually from people who aren't even professionals in the field and don't even know what they're talking about. Anyone can come on to TikTok or any other platform and claim that they are an investigative journalist or a reporter and they don't have a degree, meaning they don't know how to properly report on journalism. So they use these fear-mongering tactics and they come on as conspiracy theorists, and then it just makes us even more scared than just allowing us to accept what happened, which is an awful tragedy that's already given us all such a pit. And the last thing that we need to be exposed to is people who do not know what they're talking about, pretending to be journalists reporting on a situation that they are not trained to report on. I have a degree in journalism and I actually completely changed my career path because journalism can be such a negative, awful space to be in. My first assignment when I got into my journalism program was to write the person next to me's obituary, and I was like, holy shit, this is actually the most horrific thing I've ever had to do. And I guess you could say I'm weak or whatever, but I chose to not do that because I didn't want to be exposed to horrific news day in and day out and become desensitized to it. And it was already starting to happen to me in college. And yes, there are positive stories to report on as a journalist, and you can go more into the lifestyle space for sure, but to me, the negatives outweighed the positives. So now, as I'm scrolling TikTok as a consumer on the app, I see people forming anxiety and depression by scrolling and engaging with this content from people who are just not trained in the field. That's training, and I'm not saying to ignore bad news and to ignore what's going on in our world because it's very heavy, but I also think it's a really hard balance to take in news like this, like everything that's happened this week, and then to also be like, okay, well, I'm still me and I'm still here and I still have my purpose in my life that I want to live. You can scroll past bad news without feeling bad about not taking it in and not really wanting to engage with that. Protect your mental health, protect your peace in the best way you can. Just know that a lot of this news is fear-mongering. It's not the real details, and it can be very hard to understand that, but you have to just move with peace. I don't know.
If anyone is posting news on social media, and if they are not an expert, they should be required to state that this is just my opinion. They should be required to really state that. Hey guys, I think this, and this. This is not fact. This is just my perspective on things. Just simple as that. And they can easily use AI to do that. Easily use AI to do that. Because there are so many lies, so many stories, just rumors and all of these things. And majority of the time is not true. And people are believing lies. That is the issue. And people do not even do their own research when it comes to things like that. They don't want to.
There's been a lot of like false narratives in general about the medical community, and I wanted to clarify a few common ones that I think are preventing the general population from getting adequate healthcare or access to the healthcare they deserve. So yeah, I just want to clarify some things. And before I begin, these are my qualifications. So yeah. One of the common theories is that the theory that like medical workers and providers get paid more for suggesting certain things, such as like prescribing you a medication to lower your cholesterol or giving you a recommendation to go get your shingles vaccine or your flu vaccine. We don't get paid more for that. I'm sorry to disappoint. We're just saying it because we think it's what's best for you, and you can take it or leave it. We won't get upset. We won't get penalized if you decline. We're just supposed to give you our personal recommendation, and you can do with that information what you will. But I don't get a bonus for you agreeing. Another common misconstrued or misunderstanding is how your chart works on our computer, how the like electronic medical chart works. Just to be clear, what we can see on your chart, just kind of on the main page, if you will, is the highlights about you. Your name, your demographics, your chronic medical conditions that you are actively dealing with. So not something that happened 20 years ago that's resolved. What do I mean by that? Like, I very often hear, and I'm not alone in this, from patients where, you know, let's say somebody comes in for foot pain, and I'm like, okay, like, have you ever had any kind of surgeries on your foot or whatever? If I ask something like vague like that, when you guys respond to us with things like, well, it's in my chart, I gotta be honest with you, if you had something long time ago happen that's not happening currently, it's in the backlogs. So I have to go actively search for it. And if you don't tell me like, yeah, I had a surgery actually for an old fracture on my foot back in 2005, like I won't just automatically know. I have to search it, just like you would on Google, but in your chart. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm trying to say is don't get upset when we don't automatically know something that happened to you historically. I would love to know everything that's happened to you from birth to now, but it's just not possible. So you're gonna have to help me help you, remind me of things that are pertinent. Unfortunately, I can only see the highlights, and that's how the chart works. And finally, another theory that's incorrect that I think is usually mostly the older population thinks, you know, is that expired medications are still good and that we tell you to throw them away because we want you to like spend more of your money and like boost the pharmaceutical company. It's not true. It's expired, and so it's no longer as effective. That's why we want you to get new medications. It's not because we want to promote sales. Yeah, pharmacists, doctors, PAs, NPs, most of us, I'd say 99% of us, did not go into this field because we're business people. Most of us are really bad at business, actually. Throw away the expired medication because it's not as effective, okay? We're not trying to con you, I promise. Okay, hope this helps. Bye.
I am putting my director of IT hat back on to remind you that there are millions of disinformation campaigns happening right now all across social media. This is regardless of what political affiliations you may or may not have. As per usual, this is not a left versus right issue. This is an up versus down issue. So this is your maybe reminder or maybe first time understanding how these things work. One of the most effective ways to get people to believe things is to have them hear the same information over and over and over again. It does not need to be accurate information. They just need to have it in front of their face a certain number of times for them to believe it. Bots are a great way to get out disinformation like this. So let's say there is a message that somebody at the top wants you to believe. There's going to be a bot created, and bots aren't necessarily artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is absolutely being used as bots, but bots existed long before AI did. And the intent is to take the same message in a few different ways, like you might change the verbiage just a little bit, and make sure that it's blasted loudly across platforms and across user accounts. What starts as these fake accounts, aka bots, sending out this disinformation becomes real humans believing the information and reposting it. So if you are seeing the same meme, the same text over and over again before you hit repost, your due diligence as a human with a brain is to fact check it. So let me call out a big one that happened this week that people are still reposting a billion. We all know that there was a collision this week between a Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines flight that happened over the Potomac. And I think we all know that there are a ton of different theories out there as to what happened and why it happened. Well, there's one very specific disinformation campaign that is going around, and it is mostly affecting people who are on the left. It is saying that Trump fired 3,000 air traffic controllers and 400 senior officials at the FAA since taking office. Now, while there have been firings in plenty of departments, that is actually factually inaccurate. He did not fire, nor did anyone in his administration actually fire any air traffic controllers. Yes, lots of people have been given the option to resign. That's like a separate issue, but no one has actually been fired when it comes to air traffic controllers. There has been a huge shortage of air traffic controllers for several years, if not decades at this point. So that is not a new issue. Both Politico and Snopes do deep dives on this, so I'm not going to waste your time with it. Go and read their articles. And then we also know that there is a disinformation campaign going on directly from the head of our country regarding this being DEI. There have also been plenty of reputable articles explaining how the crash that occurred this week has exactly zero to do with DEI. We have had active disinformation campaigns going across social media for such a long time now. Many elections, not just in the United States, but abroad, the outcomes are credited to the success of disinformation campaigns. There have been whistleblowers. The most recently was someone at X explaining exactly how these things work. This isn't conspiracy. This is real. And one of my, as a technologist's concerns is that with all this disinformation, we are going to be moving into a digital dark age. It is on us to use our brains and use the resources that we do have on this little screen to fact check everything. And right now, when we're all using our voices across social media, it is your responsibility as a content creator to fact check before you post. Go out, be smart humans with a brain, and don't let the bots beat you.
Are you helping to spread misinformation by engaging with outrage content on this app? Let's talk about it. So by now I'm sure that everybody has heard that Mark Zuckerberg has announced that Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, is no longer going to work with fact checkers and instead is going to move to a community notes model, as is used on the site formerly known as Twitter. And as a journalist who spends a lot of time researching and reporting on misinformation, I have a lot of thoughts about this. First of all, I want to say that on Meta's platforms and on every social media platform that exists, any fact-checking that has ever been done has only ever touched a tiny sliver of the misinformation content. Social media is a hotbed for misinformation, period. So what Meta is saying with this announcement is that instead of doing more to try and help you figure out if the information you're encountering is real and comes from a good source, is that they're just going to back off and do even less. A lot of people are seeing this as a politically motivated step, and of course I think that's true. Meta has donated to Donald Trump's inauguration fund. They're trying to cozy up to him, frankly, just as pretty much any major business leader is trying to do when a new presidential administration comes in. Something else I want to point out is that this is also, plain and simple, an engagement strategy, because nothing drives engagement on social media like outrage. And most misinformation content on social media, research has found, uses outrage to help it spread. If you think about this for a second, it makes a lot of sense because outrage drives engagement in all directions. So if you see somebody post something that you don't like and you leave an angry comment, that's engagement that's actually going to lead more people to see the post. But also, if you see something from a creator you do like who's telling you about something really bad that happened, it makes you want to share it so that everyone will know. And that's also outrage-driven engagement, even if you have really good intentions with it. And the reason this is so important is because if you ever take any kind of class or training on recognizing misinformation, one of the biggest red flags you will be taught to identify is content that is emotionally manipulative, that's trying to make you feel something. I'm not saying that all content that is emotional is manipulative or that it's all misinformation. We unfortunately live in a world where a lot of really bad things are happening. There is a lot of real, legitimate information, especially when it comes to news, that you could encounter that would make you upset. But anytime you see a piece of information that makes you upset, what that should do is just put up like a little orange flag in your head and just make you think a little harder and slow down just a little bit and ask yourself, is there some kind of manipulation going on here? Is this piece of content being designed to make me feel something? That's all. It's like the yellow light, right? It's not stop, it's slow down. Another thing that Zuckerberg said in his announcement is that fact checkers have been too politically biased. And this is something that we just know is not true. Again, researchers have found that conservatives are more likely to believe in and to spread false information online. So it's not that fact checking is politically biased. It's just that if you have fact checking, again, when it comes to news and current events, it's mostly going to flag stuff that's coming more from the right side of the political spectrum. That's not bias, it's simply the reality. However, again, as a journalist, I have noticed over the last 10 or so years, I would say, an increase in the misinformation content that is coming more from the left or center left part of the political spectrum. And I especially see this in the form of news influencer content. I'm defining a news influencer as someone whose primary work is on social media, repackaging the work of reporters like me to tell you about it. I, as a reporter, mostly gather information from primary sources. I go out into the field, I pick up the phone, I talk to real people who have firsthand experience with the things I'm reporting on, or I talk to experts on the subject I'm reporting on. I file Freedom of Information Act and other document requests with the government and large institutions. I do archival or reference research, and I synthesize all of that into an article for you to read, and then sometimes I do come here and I tell you about my articles. But that's different from someone who is taking my article and repackaging it into something new, into a video or a post on social media for you to consume. And the problem with that is that at each step in the process, there's an opportunity to introduce new errors because we are all humans. We all make mistakes. I am not saying that reporters don't make mistakes. We do. But as reporters, we have a lot of processes in place to try and prevent us from making mistakes. Everything that I write that gets published gets fact-checked first, and it gets edited by multiple other people before it even gets to that fact-checking stage. And when I come on here and I talk about my work, again, I'm talking about work that has already been fact-checked. Whereas influencers who are mostly repackaging other people's work are almost never getting fact-checked. And again, even if they don't mean to, when they repackage our work into a new form, they can introduce mistakes. Misinformation often starts as a mistake. And the other thing about news influencers is that they need your engagement. And so again, in ways that might not even be totally intentional, what they often do is turn up the dial, they turn up the intensity to make you feel something, and it's usually outrage. And the danger with that is that if you're always feeling outraged, if every piece of content you consume makes you feel really upset, it wears you down. So it's difficult for you to focus on anything. And this is actually a classic propaganda technique. It's not to flood you even with fake information. It's just to flood you with information, period. So you're constantly upset and distracted. And if you're paralyzed in anger or in fear, you are not going to do anything. You're not going to do anything productive to stop those things that you don't want to see happening in our world. So I'm not saying you don't want to engage with information that upsets you. I'm saying you have to be careful and you have to be self-aware when you engage with information that upsets you. And the problem is when you follow someone who's always posting that outrage content that's meant to really wind you up, it kind of wears you down. So you stop feeling as suspicious of it as you should be if you're being a careful, responsible consumer of information. Really not trying to come after anyone. And I totally understand why it is so appealing to consume news and other current events information in these tiny, really digestible little snippets. I am sure I have talked so long that most people have already checked out of this video. So I get it. I understand why people want to consume content from these news influencers. But I think as we see what little fact checking that has been happening on social media shrink and shrink and shrink, this is a time where we all need to just be super careful and reevaluate who we're following and how we're engaging with different content. Let me know if you have any questions.
I appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.